Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Relentless Goal Achievers. Hope you guys are doing great. I got an awesome, amazing guest with me, Nick Hutchison. I hope I pronounced that right.
You did. That was perfect. A lot of people add an extra N and you didn't. So Hutchison is perfect.
Yeah, because I was searching for you earlier and I kept putting Hutchinson because I served with a Marine, Lee Hutchinson. And I'm like, no, it's not Hutchinson, it's Hutchison. All right, cool. Well, my friend Nick here, he's the founder of BookThinkers. It's a growing seven-figure digital marketing agency that serves mission-driven authors like myself. And also, he's got a book coming out in November 1st. So watch out for that one. It's called Rise of the Reader. Gotta love that, man, because I'm a huge reader. It's strategies for mastering your reading habits and applying what you learn. Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. I'm really excited to talk with you today. Before we press record, it seems like we're sort of cut from the same cloth. We were talking about some Napoleon Hill and some other things like that. So yeah, excited to see what you want to dive into today. I'm an open book, pun intended,
I love it.
and can't wait to share some cool stuff with your audience.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, it's clear that you love books. That's what I got out of just meeting you for the last like 20 minutes or so. Where did that come from?
Well, this might come as a surprise to anybody that's watching the video version of this, but I have about 1,000 books behind me. And I'll kick off by saying that I was not much of a reader growing up. So I was more of the athlete stereotype all the way through high school and college. But going into my senior year of college, I took an internship at a local software company. It was a sales internship. And my boss at the time recognized that I had about an hour commute each way to this internship. And he said something very interesting to me. It was along the lines of, hey, Nick, music is great, but listening to the same playlist for the 1,000th time on the way here won't get you closer to where you want to be in life. The right podcast might. So try these business podcasts. And I took him up on the advice. I started listening to some cool shows. And what I thought was interesting was that so many of the guests being interviewed on these podcasts, as I'm commuting, they were giving at least some credit for their success to the books that they were reading. So I just kind of had this moment. Maybe it's a little bit easier to articulate it now than it was back then, but I had this moment where I realized if I was choosing not to read these books that made other people successful, I was choosing to live under my own potential. So I kind of had to redo this thing where I didn't think books were cool, right? I was more of the athlete, not much of the academic. And I totally switched my gears. Now I think reading is the coolest thing on the planet. And I've used these books, these business, personal development, philosophy, psychology books to change every single area of my life. And so, yeah, I'm on here to spread the positive power of personal development books, and wasn't always a reader. So somebody listening today is like, books, I don't want to listen to that. Stay with us. I think for this conversation, you'll find it interesting.
Oh, totally, man. So what was the first book that you read?
It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That
Rich
was
Dad,
it for
Poor
me
Dad by
too.
Kiyosaki.
Get out of here, man. You know, it was really cool. I was getting out of the Marine Corps back in 2006. And I don't know who recommended it. I don't think I've ever read a full book. I was 26 years old at this time. And that was the first book I read. Robert Kiyosaki in that book. And by the way, I started selling copiers. That was my first job out of the Corps. Robert Kiyosaki was a Vietnam Marine. He was a pilot on Hueys. That was in his book. And I got out of a Huey and Cobra unit. And when he got out, he worked for Xerox selling copiers. And it was like an instant connection. And like this whole world opened up like, wait. This multimillionaire, like mogul for real estate, had the same path as I did. Like there's absolutely
Yeah.
no excuse whatsoever. And that was my first book. That's really cool, man. Why Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Well, as I was listening to these shows, just like you're highlighting right now, so many of the people referenced Rich Dad, Poor Dad as the first book that they read that got them into this world of personal development. And so here I was going into my senior year of college. I'm at a business school and I don't know anything about money or personal finance. And so I had some insecurities whenever those conversations would pop up. And as I listened to people talk about the importance of financial literacy and about how that book propelled them into real estate investing and all these other things, I'm like, it must have something to offer me. And what's funny is, just like you, I was completely hooked from page number one. Robert talks about how money is a subject that's not taught in school. So people aren't on an even playing field. It's taught at the home. And that means if you grow up in a poor middle class family, you're going to learn poor or middle class money habits. And
Mhm.
so I went from insecure, like whenever the subject of money got talked about, to leading those discussions after a few books. I read Cash Flow Quadrant, then I moved on to some other books like The Richest Man in Babylon, The Total Money Makeover. And I literally started leading these conversations. And so that was kind of the origin for me. And it made me ask the question, like, what other area of my life can I apply this to? Removing pain and developing skills. That's what these books do for us.
Man, I love it. How much do you think you retain out of these books?
Well, at first, not so much, but I've developed a bunch of retention strategies that I've implemented over the years. So now I feel like I can retain quite a bit more from these books. And my coach for this, his name is Kevin Horsley. He's the author of a book called Unlimited Memory. And
Mm.
check this out. He had a bunch of learning disabilities when he was younger. He couldn't read. He went on to win this competition called the Everest of Memory, where he had to memorize the first 10,000 digits of pi. And they'd ask him a random number, like, what's digit number 7,221? And what are the five after it? And he'd have to know that. So, I think that if you have a growth mindset and you understand that you can improve your memory and your ability to organize, store, and retain information, tons of cool things open up. And so, yeah, back then, not so much. Now I can retain quite a bit.
And that's what your book is about, yeah?
Yeah,
That's
it's about taking better action. And we were talking Napoleon Hill. One of my favorite quotes is from Napoleon Hill. It says, "Action is the real measure of intelligence."
mm.
And so I think if you read these books and it goes in one ear and out the other, or even just stays in your brain and never materializes, you're underserving yourself. And
All
so it's
right.
all about taking action.
Why is that your favorite quote?
Just because I believe that sitting back, reading these books, debating personal development philosophy, it doesn't serve anybody.
No.
But by taking action on the books that we read, that's where all the magic happens. I mean, I only started reading less than 10 years ago, and I've already designed my dream life. I'm happy, I'm healthy, and I'm wealthy. At least I'm on my way to becoming wealthy. And so it's just a product of these books. It's a product of taking action on what I read. I was able to remove insecurities, remove ego, develop certainty, develop a service-based, kind of impact-based mindset and mission for my business. And it's like, it all happened from taking action. So that's why I love that quote.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. So I invested in Jim Quick's programs for like quick memory, quick learning. And one of the things he talks about is the sun list and how to put, how to remember things. So I went through it with my kids and we learned all the presidents by just connecting them with something, so for example, George Washington, right? The sun list, first word is sun. And so first you learn the sun list and then, okay, George Washington, I'm picturing him sitting on the sun reading a book. So when you're like, who's number one? Your son, George Washington. That's kind of how it works, right? Like these little hooks. So my kid went to, I think, sixth grade or something, and the teacher says, "Who knows who who the 11th president was?" And right away, I think it was Polk, if I'm not mistaken. He's like Polk, and teacher's like, "What? How do you know this?" Right? Like he just knew him, and that was really freaking cool, man. So I love that there are these strategies I had no idea existed that people don't know about. So before we dive into your book, because I definitely want to learn about some of these strategies, tell me a little bit about your business. Like how do you help? So it's a social media marketing company specifically geared towards authors.
Yes,
What do you guys do
absolutely.
for them?
So today I have 10 people on my team, and we support hundreds of mission-driven authors every year. Authors that are writing books that are meant to be read and implemented to improve somebody's life. That's what I care about. I genuinely believe that the right book at the right time can change somebody's life. So I started this business sort of accidentally. I was sharing the books that I was reading on social media. Originally, we wanted to build this mobile application that could help people organize the notes from their books. Long story short, it never came to fruition. But in anticipation of building this app, I started posting the books that I was reading, right? Because I wanted to sell this app to these people that are already reading books. As I continued to build my audience after the app failed, authors started to reach out to me and they'd say, "Hey, Nick, my target reader for this book looks a heck of a lot like your audience. Can I pay you for a book review?" And I'm like, "Yeah, obviously I'm reading for free right now. I just failed this business opportunity. Of course, I'll accept some money in exchange for books." Meanwhile, I'm working a full-time sales job at the time. And as I'm reading these business books, I'm learning how to grow a business, ask follow-up questions, understand a customer's pain points. And so when somebody would pay me for a book review, I'd review the book, I'd put it out to my audience, help them sell some books, and then I'd go back and I'd say, "Hey, is there anything else that I could help with related to book PR, book marketing, podcasting, social media content? Like, let me just get into your world, work for free, and figure this out for you." So as I was going through this process of working with authors, I realized that most authors have a very hard time selling their books. They think that once the book is out, everybody will think it's the coolest thing on the planet. Everybody will buy it. They'll sell 35 million copies like Robert Kiyosaki did and retire into the glory, right? Be paid $1 million to get on stage. But that's just simply not how it works. There are over 1 million books published in the United States every year. So you have to work very hard to get your voice heard. So fast forward until today, like I said, BookThinkers, we have 10 people on our team. We support hundreds of authors a year, and we really have 3 core services. So number one is short form video content. We'll actually help an author turn the concepts in their book into 50 to 100 pieces of short form video content. We actually fly out. We bring the cameras, we bring the lighting, we bring a book map of all the concepts that they love to talk about, a list of hooks, maybe some calls to action so they can generate some money with their complementary products and services, coaching, consulting, speaking, things like that. Then we fly back home and we do all the editing as well. So the author walks away with 50 or 100 high quality pieces of content that can build their brand, sell their book, but also sell the complementary products and services too. So that's service number one. Number two, we do podcast booking. So we can place an author on up to 100 shows to talk about their book in anticipation of their launch. And then number three, book reviews. We have an audience that does about 1 million impressions a month right now. And so we can post about an author's book, get them tens of thousands, maybe even 100,000 impressions, sell a bunch of books, kind of get them more attention that way too. So again, the reason that this business exists is because I do believe the right book at the right time can change somebody's life. So whether I'm promoting it to my audience or I'm behind the scenes working to help an author promote it effectively, the end result is the same. The book ends up in the right hands and that person's life improves. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about the agency. Sorry, that was super long-winded, but I wanted to just give some additional context.
That was great. So I'm going to put my relentless goal achiever hat on really quick. And I want to ask you this. So when did you design this to be your business? Like, what was the process that it took you from, "Hey, Nick, can you just give me a shout out and do a book review? I'll pay you a few $100," to now you're so crystal clear. The reason I'm asking this is because if you want to be a relentless goal achiever, you got to have a clear vision of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? So I want to understand, what was your process like from that kid that was reviewing books to what you just described now?
Yeah, well, I'll share this. When I first started, like I'd mentioned, the original vision was a mobile application that could help readers. What I learned was that kind of small volume, affiliate Amazon commissions, maybe a tiny subscription, that's a tough business. Where would the money actually come from? It's these authors. They're the ones that are making the money on the books. They're the ones that could pay for this type of service. And so I think that, I'll give a little bit more context on the story. I'm working this full-time job. I want to make the jump once I start to see a little bit of success. I envision this big book promotion business. And I have a mentor tell me, "Nick, don't jump and try to build the parachute on the way down. You'll start to operate from a place of scarcity." He told me 95% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. That's a Michael Gerber thing. And that's because they run out of money. Don't jump into this thing without building an emergency fund and without generating some consistent revenue first. And although I wanted to jump, I decided to take his advice and build slowly. So, it's kind of like that Aesop's fable, the tortoise and the hare. No matter how many times you read it, the tortoise always wins. So slow and steady. That was kind of my roadmap. When I, yes, begin with the end in mind, I wanted to build a big business, but I think on the daily actions, it was like slow and steady is going to win this race. When I started building that mobile application, I thought I knew everything that the customer wanted, right? So I just built this fake product market fit that was never actually tested. And by the time that we released something, nobody wanted it. I wish I had gone with the MVP route, the minimally viable product, like put something small out there and then slowly make iterations over time. I would have saved tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of my time because, again, that mobile app failed. So when I built this book promotion business under the same name, BookThinkers, I knew that I needed to slowly start working in the right direction, collect feedback, make iterations. And that's kind of the end that I had in mind, was like slow and steady wins this race. So I was working a full-time software sales job. Those skills were transferring directly into this business that I was building. And in fact, I never even left that job until I had full-time employees in my business, and it was already doing over 6 figures in revenue. So that's how slow I went, but that was the game plan that I set out with. And thank goodness it worked. A lot of times you don't hear from the 19 out of 20 entrepreneurs that fail in the first 5 years, because they're not the success stories. They're not the ones being interviewed on podcasts. I would have been that person if I decided to jump too fast.
Gotcha. But what was the planning phase like? Did you sit down with a notepad? Did you think into it? Like, how did you get the ideas for this business?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, because I understand a relentless goal achiever does begin with the end in mind and build a plan. I was not very strong at that. I didn't have a great vision. I was connected to this purpose that the right book at the right time can change somebody's life. And I knew that if I continued to work in the space and just continued to learn and absorb information and like make these small iterations, that someday I'd end up at a place where this business was functioning well. So I'm probably not the best the best example of somebody who did start with the end in mind, because my vision has changed 1,000 times over, and what I'm optimizing for now is just enjoying the passage of time, making sure that I am of service to the people that I work with. I prioritize personal flexibility, I think, a little bit more than profit. I prioritize impact a little bit more than profit. And and so, yeah, I've got this fun business today, but man, I probably got lucky, because I didn't have like this big business plan or anything. I mean, we did for the mobile app and it totally failed. So I think I just ripped it up and started over.
Well, here's where you are a relentless goal achiever. And let me just share this with you. I think our wording might be not on the same page, but your vision never changed. Your vision of one book will change somebody's life at the right time. Right book at the right time will change somebody's life. That's the vision. How do we help people around that? That's the purpose. The plan changed. And I got this Mike Tyson poster behind me. You see that? And the quote, one of my favorite quotes, the quote, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So the plans are meant to change, but the vision didn't. You didn't jump, oh, you know what? It's not books anymore. Today we're going to go and be affiliate marketers for something else. And tomorrow we'll do that. No. You stuck with it. The app didn't work. All right, screw that. What did we learn? Okay, let's change it. Let's improve it. The vision stayed the same. So that is as relentless as you get, man. I love it.
Yeah. And I think I learned along that journey that success and failure are the same road. You just have to persevere long enough. You have to be relentless long enough to experience some success. So it's like a few more obstacles, like you're always 3 feet from gold. And so because I didn't jump right into this business full time and I kind of kept a full-time thing on the side, it enabled me to continue to persevere and be relentless long enough to make it work for myself. So you're right. I've always been connected to this vision. And although it wasn't a 40-page business plan or anything like that, it was a purpose that kept me connected to working on a daily basis towards this thing.
That's awesome, man. 3 Feet from Gold. That's another story from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I think
Yes, it
most
is.
people miss that. Most people miss the point there because they think like, oh, just don't quit, keep going. But if I remember correctly, 3 Feet from Gold, if they kept going, they still wouldn't have struck gold. They were on a different plane where the vein was. It wasn't until they sold all their stuff for pennies on the dollar to a guy who was an expert at knowing where the gold was that he came in, took a look at it. No, that guy hired an expert. That's what he did. He hired the expert, and that guy very quickly knew exactly where it was. So it's not that you got to keep going, because if you're going down the wrong road, turn your ass around, right? You're not always going to be on the right road, but have people around you that know where to find the knowledge and what you're looking for. I think that's probably a bigger point for that story.
Yeah, I think so too. I started it's a short book called Don't Be an Entrepreneur recently. And
Sounds like it
he
sucks.
yeah. He says in there though, he's like, entrepreneurship is not a solo game. It's not a solo sport. You need to be a teampreneur, not a solopreneur. You need to leverage the expertise of other people. Don't try to fix all of your own weaknesses. Outsource. Hire people on that are subject matter experts. So yeah, I never claimed to be the smartest person in the room at BookThinkers with my team. I'm always trying to delegate, automate, or eliminate things that don't bring me energy so that I can focus on what does. And so in that example with the 3 feet from gold, it's like, yeah, bring somebody else in who can focus your attention in the right places, work on the business instead of in it, like poke your head up for a minute and realize that you're digging in the wrong spot. And yeah, I think that's a great example.
So true, so true. And this gives me the opportunity to give a huge shout out to Mav and her team. There, she's my podcast manager. All I got to do is hit record, send her the recording. She's gonna cut this thing up, post it everywhere, have it on YouTube. I mean, just such an amazing job, Mav. I love you. And Daniel, who's my social media manager, and he's just amazing, man. If you guys take a look at my Instagram, just in the last month, how it looks different from what it used to look like when I would just randomly post stuff. He's done such an amazing job. So yeah, huge shout out to my team. All right, about your book, Nick, let's talk about that. Give us some strategies. Like me, I remember one year I set a goal to read 52 books. That was my like New Year's resolutions. I'm going to read a book a week. And I realized probably 6-7 months into it, maybe even earlier, that it was a stupid goal, because it's not about the quantity of the books. It's about what am I getting out of each book. And I didn't focus on the topics I was reading. I didn't focus on the content of the book. I was more focused on finishing a book a week. So me as a reader, I oftentimes either have to go back and reread things, or I'll read 10 pages and then I forgot what I read in the first 3 pages. And I think that happens with a lot of people that I talk to. What are some strategies we can use to retain this information better?
I have so many examples and I'm excited that you asked about it. So I'll definitely give some. I want to give just a quick backstory on why I decided to write the book, and then we'll dive in. So over the years, as I'm building this community, tons of people have reached out to me and they'd say, hey, Nick, I appreciate all of the recommendations, but how the heck do we take better action? Or they would ask about scheduling reading time, being more intentional with their books, how to retain more, and all of these questions around getting more out of the actual books that we're reading. Because if we're spending money and we're spending time, we might as well get the most out of them. And I'd always answer people. Like, I'm of service to my community. So I'd jump on a quick Zoom call, maybe I'd time something out, but I always felt like I was underserving those people because I had never actually taken the time to articulate and define my own process. And so as I started to like observe my own behavior from a third party perspective, I started to notice all of these unique things that I was doing in the reading process to implement and retain more. So your question was, what are some of these strategies? One of my favorite places to start with is by asking people what they're reading. They'll tell me, and then I'll say, why? And they'll be like, what do you mean, why? I'm like, why are you reading the books that you're reading? So I think it's very important to start with an intention, to build a goal around each book that we read. And when I define a goal for a book, I love to use the SMART goal framework. So the goal for the book has to be specific, it has to be measurable, It has to be attainable, realistic. It has to be relevant to your life or business so that you're emotionally tied to the goal and you continue reading and take better action. And then you have to be time bound. You have to give yourself a deadline. So one of the books that just came out that I'm working my way through is $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozy. Lead generation has been something that we're not great with at BookThinkers. We were talking about my lack of lead magnets before we kicked off. I need to work on it, right? So I have a need. Instead of just reading the book and hoping that it's going to change my life, I'm going to set a goal that would look something like this. Find and implement at least 2 strategies for effective lead generation by the end of the month. That is a specific, it's measurable. I know whether or not the book achieved its goal. It's attainable. It's not like generate $100 million by the end of the month, but just find and implement 2 things. It's relevant to my business. So I'm going to stay emotionally connected to achieving this goal. And I give myself a deadline by the end of September. And so I'm going to write that intention on the inside cover of the physical book. And I'm going to review it each and every time I open it up and read another chapter so that my brain can filter for those 2 lead generation strategies that I'd like to implement. So to kind of wrap this thing up, at the end of the book, maybe I've highlighted 10 or 15 different strategies that I could implement, but not every strategy and action is created equal. So I'll rewrite everything. Rewriting my notes is a form of repetition, and repetition leads to retention. And when I rewrite that list, I'll look at it and I'll say, what 20% of these actions, these potential actions, might lead to 80% of the change? What are the highest leveraged activities that I could take action on? And I'll only implement those. So all of that is just one strategy, but I think it's a very important thing that people miss. They don't read with intention. They just hope the book is going to offer something up on a silver platter. But if instead you set a specific goal and then you filter for the information in the book by rereading that intention over and over, staying emotionally connected to it, you will find what you're looking for. And anyway, that's one of my favorite strategies for getting more from these books.
That's interesting. You said that. I attended this course called photo reading. It was designed by a guy. His name is Dr. Paul Sheely I think he's out of Michigan or something. He's got a company called Learning Strategies. They help people learn. And so the concept for photo reading is literally you can look at a page, and we are wired that we remember every single thing is stored in our memory that we see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. Our problem is the recall. We don't know how to recall the information properly, but it's in there. It's kind of like you take a picture on your iPhone and then you have 10,000 pictures and you didn't group it properly, like trying to find that, right? So the first thing that they taught us in photo reading is intention. What's your intention for this book and this chapter that you're about to read? Set it. And then he said, read the back of it, read the back cover, understand what the book is about. But setting that intention was huge. And at the time I went through this, I was actually a director of sales for a tech company. I got back and I started implementing that for the meetings my team would have with potential clients. And so when I would go on these calls with them, I would ask them, I'd say, what's the intention for this meeting? Like, what are we hoping to get out of it? And once we said that, the meeting was so much better because we were focused through that lens. Once you set the intention to read the book is so much different because you're looking at it through the lens.
Yes.
Oftentimes I ask my Christian friends, like, why do you keep rereading the Bible? And the best answer I've ever received, one guy said, well, I read it before just as a Christian. Now I'm reading it as a father. It's a different book.
It is.
Like, wow. So, okay, I got it. Now I understand. Very cool, Nick.
Yeah, yeah. And I heard a really cool example about setting intention the other day. So the guy said, let's just say you commute to the gym and it's just a 10-minute drive. How many red cars did you see the last time that you drove to the gym? Well, I probably saw some, but I wasn't filtering for them, so I have no clue. I can't say with any certainty that I saw any red cars, again, because I wasn't filtering for them. But what if you said, next time you get in the car and you drive to the gym, you'll get $100 for every red car that you see. Now you're incentivized to filter for red cars and there's a reward. You'll be compensated. So next time you do that, you see 10 red cars or whatever the case is. It's just about the question that you're asking yourself. It's what are you filtering for? What's your intention for this drive? And the same thing happens with opportunities in life and with each book that you're reading. If you set the intention and you know exactly what you're looking for, you're more likely to find it. And yeah, just like that photo reading course that you took, you have to set the right intention for each book. And yeah, that one's changed my life in a big way. We have this RAS function, the reticular activating system in our brains, and it's important. You want to leverage it. You want to filter for cool things.
Yeah. I was watching, there's a video on YouTube, but I was going through like a Dr. Cialdini training, and he's showing this video. He says it's people playing basketball, and he says, I want you to count how many times the ball passes from one white jersey to another white jersey. And so you're sitting there counting, I think it was like 17. I'm like, I definitely got it. I saw all of them. He's like, did you notice the gorilla that walked through the middle of the court while they were passing the ball? And I'm like, no, there was no freaking gorilla. So he replays the video. Sure enough, there's a freaking gorilla that walked past. And then for some people who did notice the gorilla, he's like, did you notice the curtains changing colors? He's like, no way the curtains changed colors. So he plays it again, and sure enough, the curtains literally went from yellow to red. And there's like so much stuff we don't notice when we're focused on, the ball passing. Truly a remarkable video and a great example. What's your second favorite strategy, if you could share another one?
Oh, I have so many. I'll give one for people that aren't currently readers, how to schedule more reading time. And this one will blow your mind. So first, I like to say to people that tell me they don't have enough time to read or that they can't read books, I love to say, if I paid you $10,000 to read a book by the end of the month, do you think you could do it? Yeah. And that same person's like, well, I could read 10, right? So it's a question of, do we value these books enough to read them without being paid? So like, as far as finding time, you're not going to find more time. You have to replace something else with reading a personal development book. And so I love to say, replace 15 minutes of your morning Instagram scrolling and 15 minutes of your evening Netflix or HBO or sports or whatever with reading a good book. Not the whole activity. I'm not a robot. Like, I still watch TV and stuff, but 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening for somebody who's just starting out is probably about 20 pages. Mm-hmm. If you could do that 5 days a week, it's 100 pages a week. And most of these books are only 200 pages nowadays, a lot of the newer ones coming out. So that's a book every 2 weeks. Over the course of the next year, you can read 26 books, solving 26 problems or developing 26 new skill sets, 26 new perspectives, just by replacing a little bit of Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or YouTube and a little bit of Netflix with reading a great book. And those platforms, social media, HBO, Netflix, like, they do provide this short-term gratification, but they don't serve your future self. Reading a great personal development book does. And the other thing I'll mention, and this always makes people laugh, is like, I can't even remember the main characters' names in shows that I watched 6 months ago. That just proves how meaningless this stuff is. You aren't retaining anything from these shows. They're not improving your life. Just replace a little bit of that activity with reading the right book. So I guess the lesson here is scheduling reading time into your calendar and then watching the compound effect, of consistency change your life over a long period of time.
Yeah. Well, I'll never forget Beth Dutton. Okay. And I'll never forget John Dutton.
Me neither. Right. That's an amazing show.
Yeah.
I think that Yellowstone and Succession are worth watching, because you can learn stuff about human psychology and negotiation and business at the same time that you're being entertained. But other than those shows.
I don't remember who the hell that was in Game of Thrones. I'll tell, except for Khaleesi, but everybody else, I can't tell you who their names are. No, that was awesome, man. I really appreciate it, Nick. What should I ask you that I haven't asked you yet, Nick?
Well, I'd love to give a couple of examples of how books have changed my life just to kind of drive this home for people. So This is a great example on the return on investment from books. So a $20 book in a few hours of my time led to over 6 figures of additional revenue for my small business within the matter of a couple of months. The book was $100 million Offers by Alex Hormozy. So I was told to read this book. I was told that it could improve my average deal size and that maybe I could find some new services, build a cool new offer, and generate additional revenue for my business. So I went into it and I'm like, I'm just looking to find and implement at least 2 offer generation strategies that I could use by the end of the month. So I go into this book, I go through the exercises. As I'm going through the exercises, I find a new service idea and I'm like, I wonder if this would actually work. It was about 10 times bigger than my average deal size at the time. So I start pitching it to people. The first guy I call, he's a former client of mine. I say, hey, I have this idea for a new service. What do you think? And he's like, Nick, this is one of those simulation moments. He's like, I wrote down call Nick about this same service that I was pitching him on the back of a napkin yesterday. So I'm like, this is it. And I started selling it like crazy. But the point is that this $20 book in a few hours of my time implementing it led to something that ended up generating over 6 figures in revenue in just a few months. And so that's the power that these books can have. They literally condense decades of somebody else's lived experience into days of reading. And then you can implement them and generate this massive ROI in your life or your business. So that's an example of just, I think, the power of reading these books. And so hopefully for anybody that's not convinced or wasn't convinced to start reading prior to this, I'm sure with your audience, they're already reading a bunch of these books anyway. But yeah, man, I just love these things.
We do have an amazing audience. Yeah. And by the way, the 15 minutes of the book, I think it's great, but what you'll find is you get hooked. The right books, you don't want to put them down. I literally,
Yes.
everywhere I go, I have a book with me because I end up waiting a whole lot. I got 2 kids in travel soccer. So when they're at soccer practices, I'm reading. If I go to get a haircut, I got a book with me. Every single chance I get, I'm like just in there. Absolutely love it. Alex Hermozy's books are incredible. We did get the $100 million leads, and I've had the offers. I've read that one. It's a really good book. But what's impressive about you is the implementation. So talk to me about the actual process, man. Like so you're reading, do you have a highlighter? Are you highlighting? And then afterwards, are you scheduling time to take that and transcribe it somewhere else? And then when do you schedule time to actually look through that list and pick out the 20%?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. I think that sometimes people confuse reading and note-taking / implementation. They're completely separate activities. You don't want to multitask, right? So as I'm reading, I do keep a highlighter and a pen with me. If I find something that could fulfill my goal for the book, so in that example before, maybe a lead generation strategy that I could implement it, I'll highlight it real quick, but I don't want to lose the momentum of reading and start task switching. So once I'm done with the book, then yes, I schedule time. I have time in my calendar. And as a business owner, I have a little bit of flexibility, but then I go back and I rewrite all of those things that I've highlighted, and then I decide what I'd like to implement. Now, there are a few things
sorry, Nick. So just to get it straight, you have like a journal or something, or like you hand write what?
Yeah, I hand write on a legal pad.
Okay.
All of the potential takeaways, because again, rewriting something, it's multi-sensory. You're sometimes reorganizing and simplifying the information in your head. You're putting it down on paper, which is a form of repetition, and repetition leads to retention. And then I'm starting to analyze those takeaways. And I say, what 20% of these takeaways do I want to implement? Because I can't implement everything. Like the first time I read Think and Grow Rich, I had rewritten over 100 items. That's not realistic. So what 20% of these actions can lead to most of the change? And then this is where maybe a podcast isn't the right format to do a super deep dive on the strategies, but they're all in the book. I do 2 things that I think are very important with the things that I want to implement. Number one, I've developed this. It's called an activity tracking system. It's a Google sheet that measures everything that I'm doing in my business and my personal life, the goals that I have for each week. So let's say that I want to build something out by the end of the month. I'm going to put that as actionable as I can into my activity tracker and set a goal to do it by the end of the month. And I'm in that activity tracker every single day, looking at it, measuring things on a daily or weekly basis. And that's kind of step one, is it's put into a place that I know I will take action on it. And then step number two is I have this accountability group that actually I have two of them. They meet on a weekly basis, and I review the activity that I'm reading from these books, and I'm choosing to put into my tracker with my group so that they can hold me accountable to taking action. So if I tell them I'm going to build this new landing page or lead mechanism by the end of the week, and I show up next week on the call and it's not done, they're going to give me a hard time about it. It's kind of like when you wake up and you go to snooze your alarm, but somebody else is at the gym waiting for you. You're more likely to take action because you're giving yourself a deadline to be at the gym by 7:30. So you might as well get out of bed. My accountability groups have encouraged me to take so much action. And I have people in my life that support me. They celebrate my wins just as much as they celebrate theirs. And in the book, I detail how I built my accountability group, the right type of people that you want in there with you, how often it should meet, the format of each meeting. Because again, I think accountability is something that unfortunately a lot of people miss. Entrepreneurship, building your dream life, it's not a solo sport. It's a team sport. So you might as well get good people backing you. So I know that was a ton of info kind of jammed into like 2 minutes, but those are some of the really important implementation things that I do.
Yeah, I think you lied to us earlier when you said you're not a robot, you watch TV. I think you're a freaking robot. No,
A
but that's
little
what it
bit.
takes, man. Whatever it takes. When you're that clear. I was running this morning. I'm training for a marathon right now. So I got a coach. He tells me what to run. This morning was a really good run. And I had this thought about, I'm always thinking about relentlessly achieving goals. And my wife and I, we have a seminar coming up next week on goals. And so I'm always thinking, like, how do I make this better? And this thought comes up. It's like, you ever see a dog, and not to compare people to dogs, but like a dog who's like trying to find a scent, whether it's a police dog, whether it's a hunting dog, and they're kind of all over the place, and then bam, they lock in. And all of a sudden, whoop, there goes the guy with the leash behind the dog. The dog is just full speed ahead. Nothing's getting in their way. They're beelining right towards that scent, towards that goal. They found it. They're going, and everybody can picture, right? Like you can see this dog dragging the guy behind him, right? Every time you see them chasing criminals with dogs, the guy's barely holding on. The dogs are like on it.
Yeah, it happened to my wife a couple of weeks ago. My dog caught the scent of a cat and she was walking it. She was walking him by herself, and she said she got pulled into a neighbor's yard, which is funny, but yeah.
Nothing is going to hold that dog back, right? Like, and that sounds like that's what you are. It's like the goal is the scent, right? Like once you have your weekly goal, you always have something while you're waking up in the morning. It's so exciting. It's like that first day of school, right? Like you jump out of bed differently. And most people don't have goals. Most people don't set them. I love that you have weekly ones. I love that you're pulling stuff out, automatically putting them on your to-do list. I use a Trello board for this. So you have the Google stuff. I don't track like every single thing. I have one that's like every idea just goes to one, and then I drag them to when, do it done this week, then per project, whatever. But I don't think I'm as rigid as you are, which I really like what you're doing.
Yeah, well, like Jocko says, discipline equals freedom. And although I am very organized and my action is measurable, it creates a lot of freedom. And so I'll kind of wrap up here. Not that you were implying this, but a lot of people in my life have over the years. I'm 29. My wife and I, we just got married earlier this year. We've been to 25 different countries together, sometimes for up to 3 months at a time. And it's because I'm so disciplined and regimented at home, focused on goal setting and relentless about achieving them, that I have the flexibility to live a life that's better than the people who criticize, my lifestyle choice. Cause they're like, hey, go have fun. And I'm like, I have more fun than anybody I know.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having fun. And by the way, progress in my health, my wealth, my happiness, my relationships, like that also fulfills me in a really interesting way. So yeah, I love it. And I know we're now running. We only have a couple minutes left, but
Great,
I wanted
man.
to throw that in at the end.
Yeah, no, Nick, Thank you so much, man. In the Marines, we have a saying, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And for you to be able to do the things that you want to do, you got to kill the person that you are, because the person you are isn't doing those things. You got to die and become somebody new to get to that next level. So that's exactly what you did. I'm honored that you became here and over delivered, man. You're amazing, Nick. Look forward to building that relationship with you and seeing all your growth, my friend. Thank you. Thank you for adding so much value to us.
Thank you.
Have a good one, man. Bye, everybody.